Hey Cotton Balls, I'm Nitro, and welcome to Nitro PODFIC. Today we will be reading chapters 12 and 13 of The Ghosts of the Gotham Opera House by Tay_Tay19, Uncontrollably Alt on AO3. Thank you to the person in the comments that alerted me to the fact that I had it listed wrong. Don't forget to drink some water, have some food, and take care of yourselves. Also, sorry if I'm not sounding great, I am a little sick currently. Let's get into it. Chapter 12. Tim. Tim stands on the stage of the old Gotham Opera House and wonders how exactly he'd ended up here. How did following the new spider-themed vigilante end up with him being brought home by Red Hood and Peter? Jesus Christ, by Peter and Jason Todd. Jason Todd, who is alive and well. Okay, not well, but definitely alive. His Robin is alive. Tim feels like he might vibrate out of his skin if he doesn't calm the fuck down. "What do you think?" Peter asks. He's standing beside Tim, rocking back on his heels with his hands stuffed into the pockets of an oversized Superman hoodie that Tim is honestly pretty sure belonged to Dick before. Or Dick at least had the same one. He still hadn't quite figured out what Peter's connection to Dick was. They looked similar, but at the same time different. Peter's hair was brown instead of black, and a bit more curly. His skin isn't as tan as Dick's either, and he's got brown eyes instead of blue. But the shape of his eyes, his smile, and even some of his mannerisms are all Dick. "It's quaint," Tim says hesitantly. Honestly, it's pretty fucking creepy. He grew up hearing stories of the haunted opera house in Crime Alley, and the other kids at his school daring each other to enter. No one ever did. It's clear that Peter has made an attempt to clean the place up. The stage has been swept clear, and it looks like Red Hood, Jason, has turned the orchestra pit into his base. He's got a computer set up in there, and his entire arsenal spread out on tables. One of the opera boxes has a curtain hanging over it, hiding it from view. "It's a shithole," Jason says, dropping down into the orchestra pit and unloading his weapons onto one of the tables. "You guys suck," Peter sighs. "Jason got us some generators, so our sleeping box and our kitchen box have power, and then he's got power in his supervillain base down there too." "Hey, I'm a crime lord, not a supervillain. And what happened to you calling me a vigilante?" Jason asks, sounding affronted. "You have explosives down there," Peter says. Tim eyes the table of explosives and wonder what the hell Jason plans to use them for. This whole thing feels kind of surreal, and he's a little unsure about Jason himself after being attacked twice. Not to mention, the Red Hood has been running around Gotham killing criminals. There was the whole mess with the bag of heads, and just the other night Red Hood and Batman had fought, and there'd been something involving the Joker, but after the whole Joker kidnapping Tim mess, Bruce was hesitant to share any of the cases involving Joker with Tim. Also, there's literally a tire iron strapped to Jason's back under his leather jacket, and Tim had read the autopsy report before Bruce had realized how easily Tim could hack into the Batcomputer. Jason had been killed by the explosion, but his body had been riddled with injuries that could have definitely been caused by a tire iron. "Do you have an autopsy scar?" Tim asks. Jason freezes and Peter's eyes widen. "Do you have any fucking manners?" Jason asks, turning to glare up at them. "Nothing useful outside of gala, really," Tim shrugs. "Wait, is that actually a thing?" Peter asks. Jason flips Tim off and then tosses his leather jacket over the back of a chair. The hoodie he'd been wearing underneath is actually a zip-up sleeveless thing that makes Tim think Jason might get his bad fashion sense from Dick. Jason pulls up the hoodie and his shirt, showing a long scar down the middle of his abdomen, and most likely splits into a Y shape at the top. "There, happy?" Jason asks, letting his shirt drop back down. "Obviously not," Peter says. "Mad that you didn't get an autopsy scar too?" Jason asks. He pulls himself out of the pit onto the stage in front of them. "I was dust. You can't do an autopsy on dust. Plus, I was on another planet," Peter yells. Tim looks between the two of them. "I'm sorry, did you both die?" he asks, trying to catch up to what has obviously been an ongoing conversation topic for them. "Yes," they say at the same time. "How did you guys come back?" "I got better," Jason grins. My mentor invented time travel to collect the magic stones that killed me in the first place and use them to bring everybody they'd killed back to life. What? Tim needs a cup of coffee, or an energy drink, or a lobotomy. You don't just get better from being dead. Well, I did, Jason says with a shrug. Woke up in a coffin, dug my way out of my own grave. Now I'm back in the land of the living. We're ghosts, Peter adds, because Jason won't let me call us zombies. Zombies have more brains than you, Jason teases him. Tim resolutely ignores the pang of definitely not jealousy he feels. He's not one of Bruce's kids, and he'll probably never be Bruce's kid. Hell, he's barely even a Robin. He picked up the suit himself, and now that Jason is really back, it's only a matter of time before the title is taken from him. So, he is definitely not jealous of the almost brotherly relationship that Jason and Peter clearly have created. Okay, Tim says, taking a deep breath. He desperately wants his questions answered, but he needs to be careful not to set Jason off again. Peter had said he'd asked the wrong question at the tower and had set Jason off, so Tim will have to be more careful. Peter and Jason stop their playful bickering to look at him, and Tim wonders if there are any trapdoors on the stage for him to disappear through. He needs to keep it together. Sure, he's only running on like 3 hours of sleep and 2 cups of coffee from the diner, but whatever. He's still Robin for the time being, and he should act like it. You gonna interrogate me? Jason asks. I have questions, he admits. Of course you fucking do. You would have questions too if you found out that your predecessor had come back from the dead. If my predecessor had died, I would have hunted down the bastard that did it and put a bullet in his skull, Jason growls. Tim does not think about being attacked in the graveyard all those months ago. They'd thought it had been Clayface, but there was too much coincidence for it to have been Clayface the whole time. I tried that, Tim admits. What? I went after the Joker on my own. What happened? Jason demands. Peter is watching Jason's eyes intently, and when Tim looks, he sees that Jason's once blue eyes are more green now. Green eyes, white streak in his hair. Lazarus pit. Jason had been in the Lazarus pit, and he must be experiencing the pit rage. That's what Peter had meant when he said Jason wasn't in control of himself. But how much of it was the pit, and how much of it was just Jason? He got me with his toxin. He kept me for a while. Tim hates thinking about that time. He hates that sometimes he still wakes up choking on laughter. How'd you survive? Jason's eyes are fully green, but he hasn't moved at all. Nightwing found us. Joker had he told Nightwing that he'd killed me too. He bragged that he'd gotten 2 out of 3 Robins. Tim prepares himself for the next part. He killed the Joker, beat him till his heart stopped. Jason looks unsteady on his feet. Peter moves closer, and Jason grabs his shoulder to steady himself. Then why is that bastard still alive? Jason asks. Because killing the Joker would have ruined Nightwing. It would have turned him into something that he hated. And Batman had already lost one son. He lost you, and he thought that he'd lose Nightwing too if he let the Joker die. So, he brought him back, Jason says with resignation. Nightwing didn't know about you, Tim says softly. He was off-world when you died. He didn't know until he got back to Earth after your funeral. It broke him, losing you that way. It broke B, too. He wasn't right. He was violent. Even minor criminals were hospitalized after he was done with them. I'd been following you guys. I knew that B was Batman, and I thought that he needed a Robin because you always made him better. What? I was obsessed with Batman as a kid, and I was at the circus the day Nightwing's parents fell. I recognized his movements as Robin. I was too young at the time to get around on my own, but as soon as I could, I started following. Then you became Robin, and I watched how Batman changed with you. How he seemed to smile more, even on patrols. I saw the way you were with people, too. Always willing to stop what you were doing to help others. The way you made sure to check in on the street kids. I idolized you. Jesus Christ, kid. Jason leans more of his weight on Peter's shoulder, but the younger teen doesn't even seem to notice. Tim remembers seeing Peter pick up Red Hood on the roof of the Titan's tower. He hadn't struggled at all then, either. Tim hadn't planned to come here and spill his heart. He hadn't thought he'd ever have the chance to say this stuff to Jason, though, to really meet his Robin. But Jason was back now, and he needed to hear about the good that he did, the way he helped Bruce. If there was any chance of bringing him back into the family, then he needed to hear this stuff. Then maybe Tim could catch a fucking break for a bit. Isn't Batman supposed to be a detective? Peter asks, tilting his head back to look up at Jason. How did you guys not notice a little kid following you around? I was very small, Tim shrugs. I thought that I could use my knowledge to help B. I went looking for Nightwing because he'd left the city. I found him back with the circus, and I thought I could convince him to come back and be Robin again. He did bring me back to Gotham with him, and introduced me to Bruce and Alfred. But he said he couldn't be Robin anymore, which is stupid if you ask me, since Robin was his to begin with. You have to grow out of the scaly panties at some point, Jason says. There's a bit of amusement in his voice now, at least, so Tim thinks he might be on the right track. Dick seems to be the answer to getting Jason back, and that makes perfect sense, really. Dick wasn't just a predecessor to the Robin name for Jason. He was his brother, and whatever fight he has with Bruce doesn't involve Dick. Dick, who Jason knows tried to kill the Joker for him. Dick, who nearly broke himself to avenge Jason's death, and what he thought was also Tim's death, though Tim knows that Dick's outrage had been more about Jason than himself. Well, Batman needed him to be Robin, because Robin is Batman's partner. And when Nightwing refused, I realized that. Well, if he wasn't going to do it, then I would. At least until Batman could find another Robin. The costume fit, at least, and well, I knew their secret identities, so it's not like they could get rid of me. Oh my God, Jason says. He drops his head down on top of Peter's, and Tim is worried for a moment when he sees the older teen's shoulders shaking. But then Jason bursts out laughing and lets his whole body drop onto Peter, who keeps him standing with an amused smile on his face. You blackmailed Batman? Jason cracks out. Tim blinks at him, not really being able to reconcile his memories of being attacked by the Red Hood in a graveyard with the sight of Jason Todd collapsing in laughter on top of a much smaller version of Dick. Tim's fingers itch for his camera. Absolutely I did, Tim says. And then he can't help himself, because his Robin is in front of him, and he's laughing, and Tim can do nothing but laugh with him. The good kind of laugh that doesn't steal his breath and remind him of torture. Peter snorts at the both of them, looking incredibly fond. Chapter 13. Now, the author has left some notes for this chapter with possible trigger warnings. This chapter contains depictions of recovery efforts following a mass tragedy. There is nothing graphic, but please make sure to take care of yourself and put this down if you don't think it is a good idea to continue. Jason. Jason waits until Tim is gone, and Peter is engrossed in one of his projects to really take the time to sit down and think about the events of the past few days. The Lazarus juice, or whatever it is still inside him, has already pretty much healed his injuries, leaving just behind more scars added to his collection. He stands in the bathroom now, staring at himself in the remains of the mirror. He doesn't see the boy that he used to be anymore, the Robin that Tim had described like he was some kind of idol or something. He brings a hand up to touch the newest scar on his neck. It's still fresh, barely healed, really. He's lucky that Bruce has such good aim. Just a bit deeper, and not even the Lazarus magic could have stitched him back together. He's pieced together enough of his memories to truly hate the person he'd been in that fight. The way he'd taunted Bruce with Dick's potential death. He'd heard Bruce break his own rules, screaming Dick's name as he watched Bloodhaven burn. Had he screamed that way in Ethiopia? Had he called for Jason the way that Jason had called for him? He'd given Bruce his forgiveness for not making it in time. That was fine. Jason's older now, and he knows that Bruce had done his best. He'd given Jason an order, and Jason hadn't followed it. If he just listened, then he wouldn't have died. But God, he wanted Joker dead, and now the Joker is still alive out there. He's still looming over Gotham like a bomb waiting to go off. How many will die? How many more will he kill? Why did Jason have to give Bruce the choice? He'd had opportunity after opportunity to kill the Joker, and he'd put it off trying to prove something to Bruce, to himself. He'd failed. He'd come here to hurt Bruce, and the only person hurting right now was himself. He and the nearly 6 million people who had lost their lives in Bloodhaven. Jason picks his helmet off the bathroom counter and looks into the dark eyes of it. What can he do? If he has to go out there, what difference could he make? He looks at himself one more time in the mirror. Jason Todd. Robin. Red Hood. Who is he? What can he become? He puts the helmet on and leaves the bathroom. His favorite leather jacket is still down in the orchestra pit, along with most of his weapons, beside his knife, strapped to his thigh. It doesn't matter right now. He has no plans, no schemes. I'm going out, Pete. He calls out to the stage where Peter sits surrounded by torn-apart electronics. Peter tilts his head back to look up at him. Where? He calls back. To Bloodhaven. He heads for the doors. Somehow, it doesn't surprise him when Peter jumps and lands beside him. Isn't that dangerous? Peter asks. It probably is. There have been recovery teams out in Bloodhaven since the explosion looking for anything that survived the blast, pulling bodies out of the rubble and trying to identify them. Even the Justice League sent help. Yeah, probably. But you want to go anyway? I haven't pissed off any superheroes lately. It's ruining my street cred. Let me suit up. I'll come with you. Peter turns to run back to where he'd stashed his suit, but Jason catches his arm before he can. Not your full suit. Just wear one of my domino masks. If someone asks you who you are, tell them you came from out of town. Don't answer any real questions. And try to keep the freaky spider shit to a minimum. Jason hates how much he reminds himself of Bruce. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Peter shoots a web to the ceiling and launches himself up into their box. He's only gone for a few seconds before he returns with the domino mask and the glue Jason keeps with them. How do I do this? He asks. Jason takes both from him and carefully applies the glue to the mask. Head straight, move your hair, he says. Peter straightens out his posture and pushes his curls back away from his face with both hands. Jason places the mask carefully over his eyes, checking to make sure none of the glue leaks out. He's gotten his own curls caught in the glue to know how much of a pain it is to get out. Peter lets go of his hair and grins up at Jason. How do I look? He asks. Like trouble, Jason says with a laugh. Peter's headphones are around his neck, and he's wearing the Superman hoodie he seems to live in now. Jason's kind of hoping the Justice League is still at the site. He'd love to see the looks on their faces if they thought Teenage Dick was coming back. Jason picks up the headphones and drops them over Peter's ears. It's not going to be pretty. Try to keep your ears and your senses as closed as you can. If it gets too much, I'll give you my helmet. I'm sure your weird little robots can mod it to block more out for you, and have Karen keep us connected at all times. All right, Peter says with a nod. Jason is pretty sure that this is a bad idea, but sitting around and doing nothing is just as bad of an idea. He needs to be out there. He needs to see if Red Hood can actually do some good in the world. His bike is almost miraculously where he'd left it hidden away. He should figure out how to get it into the opera house with them, or find a safe house where he can stash it. It's only a matter of time before one of the residents of Crime Alley decides it's worth the risk. Both of them are silent on the drive out to Bloodhaven. With the bridge gone, they have to take the long way around the bay. Peter's hands grip Jason's hoodie tightly as the ruins come into sight. The rescue teams are still at work. Bright lights have been brought in to keep their efforts brightly lit despite the never-ending gloom that seems to curse this part of the country. There's a telltale blur of red and gold as a speeder zips around the city and the green glow of a lantern's ring. Jason slows the bike down as they approach the barricade that marks the edge of the blast zone. It's being guarded, of course. The National Guard, probably. Jason stops the bike and waits for Peter to get off the bike before getting off himself. The soldiers grip their guns tightly as they eye Jason's helmet. "Hi," Peter says cheerfully as he pulls off his motorcycle helmet. His headphones have shrunk down to fit under it, but they'd returned to their original shape now that they're free. "Who are you?" one of the soldiers asks. "We came to volunteer our help," Jason says. "Civilians are not allowed through," is the response. Jason wishes that he could just blast his way through them. "We aren't civilians, obviously," Jason says, waving a hand at his own mask and then Peter's. "They look unsure at least." "The Bat sent us," Jason tries. "The Bat sent a kid?" one of them says a bit mockingly. "He sent two, actually," a voice says from behind them. Jason doesn't know whether or not to be annoyed or relieved when the two guards move aside to reveal Robin. "Robin!" Peter says cheerfully, giving his new best friend a wave. "They're with me," Tim says. "You guys are late." Yeah. Jason steps over the barricade and between the two soldiers without a second glance. Peter just hops over it and hurries over to stand beside Tim. "What are you guys really doing here?" he asks as they walk further into the mess. "I thought you were going home to sleep," Jason accuses. "And then I saw how badly things were going over here. They needed more help running things, and with B out of commission, then it falls to me." "Not Nightwing?" Peter asks. "He's too emotionally compromised. He's here, but he can't be trusted to run things the way they need to be run." "Where can we help?" Jason asks. "Keep us together, and preferably away from Dickwing." Tim gives him a look that would probably be annoyed if his eyes were visible, but he does lift up his tablet and shows them a map of the different zones. "You can work in Zone 7. There are no heavy hitters over there. How much can you handle?" "What do I call you like this?" Tim asks. Peter shrugs his shoulders and looks at Jason. "Hood said I should lay off the spider here. He doesn't need to be attracting attention from the League, and I'll run interference if any of them cause problems." "Okay, but we can't just call him nothing." Tim sounds exasperated. Jason gets an idea. "Call him Grayson." "Oh, come on." Tim types on his keyboard and somehow manages to flip Jason off at the same time. "Fine. You and Grayson are assigned to Zone 7. There's no League assigned there right now, but Flash is roaming." "Which Flash is it?" Jason asks. "2. Thought he could be useful if N went off the rails." "Probably a good idea." Jason pats Peter on the back and then heads for the zone they've been assigned. The retrieval efforts haven't been going on for too long yet. They had to wait for the city to stop burning before they could bring people in, but they've made pretty quick work now that they're here. They've used scanners to locate what they think might be bodies, and they've got them marked off on maps. The workers seem a little hesitant about letting Peter help, but once he picks up a large slab of concrete nearly 3 times his size and sets it gently in a cleared zone, they seem to accept him. Jason and Peter get to work. They don't talk much as they work. Peter seems to get more and more subdued as they go, but he doesn't let up. Jason's strength was enhanced a bit by the Lazarus pit, but nowhere near the kid's level, so he lets the kid handle the heavy lifting and he handles the bodies himself. He's climbing back out of the deep crater they've been working in, a much too small black bag in his arms, when he spots Nightwing waiting for him. Jason nods his head at him, then moves to the tents and lays the bag down in a row of others. "Nightwing," he says as he straightens back up. "Red Hood." "What are you doing here?" Dick asks. Jason grabs a couple bottles of water from a cooler, then walks back to the crater and knows that Dick is following close behind him. He watches Peter where he digs through some rubble. "Doing some good. Mostly supervising." He nods at Peter. Dick comes to stand beside him, looking down as well. Peter grabs onto what looks like a large boulder, and Jason's pretty sure the kid's using a little bit of his stickiness as he pulls it out of the ground and tosses it up and into the rapidly growing pile of rubble. "Who is that?" Nightwing asks. He looks beat. His shoulders are sagging and his suit is covered in dirt and tears. Jason doubts that he's slept since the explosion. "Who am I?" Jason asks. "I'd love to know if you're willing to tell." "I don't know if I am. Not until I figure out what comes next, or you figure it out on your own." "Fine. You won't tell me who you are, but who's the kid?" "Mine. You and the Bat can't have him. Grayson," he calls. Nightwing doesn't startle, but Jason can tell he's tensing up. Peter pauses for a second and seems to either remember that he's supposed to be going by that name now, or maybe that Karen is reminding him. He turns to look up at them. Jason holds up one of the water bottles. Peter nods, then jumps up out of the crater. He flips in the air before landing in front of the two vigilantes. Jason would be more amused if he wasn't so drained by their work. Peter stands up straight and tries to wipe some dirt off his face, but just ends up smearing everything more. "Everything good?" he asks. "Hydrate or die," Jason says. He hands a water bottle over to Nightwing, then opens the other one, giving it to Peter. Peter doesn't argue, and he finishes the bottle in nearly one gulp. "Your name is Grayson?" Dick asks, his eyes scanning over Peter. It's covered with dirt as well, but Jason wonders if he recognizes his own clothes on Peter. "That's what he tells me," Peter says with a grin as he points a finger at Jason. "What do you say?" "That he knows how things work around here better than I do. And if he thinks it's a good idea to keep my identity from you guys, I should probably do that. Also, I've gotten kind of fond of Gotham, and I don't want anyone chasing me out for what I can do." "Heaven forbid he gets adopted by a billionaire and dressed up like a traffic light," Jason tries to joke. He takes the other water bottle back from Dick and trades it for the empty one in Peter's hand. Peter obediently drinks that one too. "Oh yeah, because being adopted by a crime lord is so much better for young, impressionable kids." Nightwing crosses his arms. "It was less of an adoption and more of a hostile takeover. On his part, that is. He's sticky, hard to get rid of." "He won't admit it, but I know he likes me." Peter shuffles closer to elbow Jason's arm with a smile on his face. It's strained, though, and Jason's pretty sure that if he could see under the domino mask, that it wouldn't be reaching his eyes. "How are you doing?" Jason asks him, slinging his arm around Peter's shoulders. Peter leans against him and fiddles with the cap of his water bottle. Jason does his best to ignore Dick watching them so closely, ignore the fact that Dick looks ready to snatch Peter away from him at any moment. "I'm good. I can keep going," Peter says with determination, and Jason knows that he will. He knows that Peter will stay here until he collapses from exhaustion. "I'm not talking about physically. How are you doing mentally? This is a lot, even for me." Jason has seen death. He has caused death. He knows destruction better than he knows himself sometimes. Peter seems to be taking his question seriously. It takes a bit for him to come up with an answer, but Jason doesn't rush him. "I've seen war," Peter says. "I saw an entire planet that had been destroyed, and I fought on a battlefield, but everyone on that battlefield had chosen to be there. They knew what they had signed up for when they went into it, and they knew that what they were fighting was worth their sacrifice. These people had no idea. They were just living their lives. There were children here, whole families, and I couldn't save any of them. I failed again. I keep failing." "I know the feeling," Dick says. "This was my city. It was my job to protect these people, and I almost didn't make it out myself. I had to be saved, and I don't know how I should feel about it. I should be grateful to be alive, or mad about it, because maybe if I hadn't been there, then the person that saved me could have saved someone else." The three men stand there in silence for a few minutes. Jason keeps Peter tucked against his side, and though he won't be caught dead admitting it out loud, he's pretty sure he needs the physical contact as much as Peter does right now. He came out here to help, to do good, to prove to himself that he could still be good, but how can he think of himself as good when he'd watched the explosion happen, and he'd laughed? When he'd heard Bruce's desperate cries for his eldest son, and he'd mocked him? How can he stand here next to Nightwing, next to Dick, his brother, and not drown in the shame of his own actions. "Can I use the helmet?" Peter asks. Dick is still there. Jason has no doubt that he'll know exactly who Jason is if he removes the helmet. Is this it? Is this how he reveals himself to Dick? What will Dick think? He must know about the fights that he and Bruce have had. He knows that Jason tried to hurt Robin. Hell, he had been pulled away in the wake of this tragedy to travel across the country to save Robin from Jason. He probably hasn't slept in days, but maybe it's better this way. Maybe it's best if he uses this weird truce they seem to have formed in the past few minutes. "Nightwing, let him use your mask solvent, and I could use a spare mask if you've got one," he says. Dick has a frown on his face, but he hands over the solvent from one of his pouches. "Kid's never worn a domino mask before," Jason explains. He turns Peter so his back is to Nightwing, and he helps him properly remove the domino from his face. Peter blinks a few times, when his eyes are no longer covered, and reaches up to touch his face, but Jason pushes his hand away. "It's still gonna be sticky. You'll have to wash it off properly when we get back home." "Okay," Peter says. He takes the headphones off and lets them hang around his neck. Jason takes a deep breath and then turns off the voice modulator on the helmet. He knows that Peter's not fond of the sound, and it'll probably be worse from inside the helmet. He reaches back to disengage the mask and then pulls it off. He's lucky. He hasn't had the time to put explosives into this helmet since he blew his last one a few weeks ago after the fight with Black Mask. He sticks the helmet on Peter's head and makes sure it's properly latched before letting go. "Does that help?" he asks. The mask has a filter on it, so the smell should be muted at least. Peter's headphones shift and the weird little robots spread over the helmet, giving it a different look as they shape a gold face on the front. "Yeah, it's quieter and the smells aren't as strong." "That's good." Jason pats the top of the helmet. "Why don't you go let the coordinator know that we've finished this spot? I think me and Nightwing need to have a chat." "Sure, but don't forget we have to clean the house some more before we have any more guests." Peter's head moves side to side as he looks between the two of them. Then he heads off towards where a tent has been set up. Jason knows he'll still be listening, but at least they'll have a moment of semi-privacy. He turns to look at Nightwing and freezes at the sight of the tears falling from his mask. "Little Wing?" he asks, and there is devastation in his voice. "Hey, Big Bird." He gives a weak smile, and then Dick is throwing himself forward, squeezing Jason in a hug so tight he's pretty sure he hears his ribs creak. Oh my god, Dick babbles. He releases Jason from the hug, just to grab his shoulders and move him back so he can get a proper look at him. "Oh my fucking god." Dick touches his hand gently over the scar forming on Jason's neck. "Deep breaths, Dick Wing," Jason reminds his brother. Dick shakes his head and pulls Jason forward again, pulling Jason down to press their foreheads together. "Is it really you?" "Do you want it to be? After everything the Red Hood has done?" "Fuck yes. Yes, I want my little brother back. Nothing else matters as long as you're alive." "You..." Jason feels like he's choking. "You really feel that way?" "Yes." And Dick sounds so sure of himself, so absolute, that even Jason's screwed up brain can't come up with an argument for it. So, he lets Dick hold on to him, pretends that he doesn't know how Dick's hand is on his neck feeling his pulse, ignoring the fact that he's definitely taller and bigger than Dick now, and lets himself believe that he's the same kid from a crime alley that Dick had dubbed Little Wing all those years ago. Hey, Cotton Balls, that's the end of chapters 12 and 13. Have a good day, and thank you for listening. See you again in chapter 14.